תודה רבה, נתן. You've been a wonderful champion of the Jewish people. You stand tall. You really do. You really do. As do all of you. I have here lifelong friends, and I deeply respect your dedication, your lifelong dedication to the Jewish people and the Jewish state. And I don't just say that, I mean that because you mean it. And you've shown it time and again. One thing you can say definitely is that the challenges for the Jewish people never stop. It's never boring. I think that as we raise the stature of the Jewish state, as we increase its economic, technological, scientific, and military power, we are keenly aware of the challenges that face us. You understand, especially those who are in business, but also in the military, all power is relative. It's relative to other nations' powers or adversaries' powers. All power is relative. There's been an absolute, marked, amazing increase in Israel's power and capacities. But the threats that face us are also growing. They're changing in nature, and they're also growing in ways that are understood, in some ways that are less understood. The number one threat facing Israel and the Jewish people is Iran's pursuit of nuclear weapons. And we're now at a historic crossroads. The negotiators are discussing a deal that will endanger Israel's survival. It will endanger the security of the region. It will endanger the peace of the world. They must not reward a regime that denies the Holocaust, arms, funds, trains, and dispatches terrorists on Israel's borders and around the world. Over 30 countries in almost each continent. Iran or its henchman Hezbollah are developing new cells every few weeks. They just discovered in Cyprus one apartment with tons of ammonium nitrate, I won't bore you with the details, what happens when you detonate tons of ammonium nitrate. One apartment. One cell out of an endless number. And the targets are to be Israelis, Jews, Westerners, Arabs. It's just one activity. It's not Yemen. It's not Hezbollah. It's not the Golan Heights fronts that they're doing. It's not the rearming of Hamas. It's not Libya. It's not Sudan. It's not Iraq, where they have standing armies. Iran is the most aggressive power in the world. It peddles its terrorism around the world, and it pursues aggression, sheer naked aggression in this region, and it's growing. It's been growing during the Lausanne talks. It's unabashed. 2 days before the Lausanne agreement, Iran says officially, the destruction of Israel is non-negotiable. What brazenness. You know what brazenness is. There's a Yiddish word for it. This is not that Yiddish word. This is murderous brazenness. And since they say the same thing, they're out to destroy us, but they're out to conquer everything else in the Middle East, and to have the ability to have nuclear weapons, yes, deferred a decade, Not never, just not now, if they don't violate the deal. If they don't violate the deal, this Iran that calls for our destruction, that is undermining almost every single regime in the region, that is preventing terror globally, this Iran that has a mission to export the revolution, this Iran will be given a clear pathway not to a bomb, but to many, many bombs, because all restrictions on their nuclear program will be lifted within a decade. But immediately this Iran will get a cash jackpot in the first year of $150 billion. That's close to half their GDP, okay? That's like the United States receiving a cash jackpot of $8 trillion, okay? For Israel, it's roughly receiving $120 billion. You know what our defense budget is? Now, what do you think will happen with that money? Will it go to courses and classes on coexistence with Israel and harmony among peoples, or do you think it'll go to arm the revolution? What a question. So the consequences of the Iran deal is not merely the non-conventional threat that will be hanging over our heads, it's the immediate conventional threat of arming more weapons, more missiles, more precision-guided munitions, more Yakhont missiles, more SA-22s in Lebanon, in Hezbollah, against Israel, against Yemen, on the Straits of Bab el-Mandeb, everywhere, and more terrorism worldwide. Big mistake, historic mistake. I urge the P5+1 not to sign this bad deal, which is getting worse by the day. As Iran walks away even from the Lausanne agreements, refusing to have, for example, inspections on its military sites. It said, you can inspect us, but not in the places we choose. We decide that you don't inspect some inspections. That's exactly what they're saying. And the many other retreats from the bad deal of Lausanne. This deal is getting worse by the day, and it should not be signed. It has been said, better no deal than a bad deal, better no deal than a terrible deal. And that's what the choice is today. I urge you to make your voices heard in your respective countries, because it's not too late to stop Iran. It's not too late to stop this bad deal. And our people are summoned at given times. If we've learned anything from our history, anything, is that when you recognize a clear and present danger, don't treat it as routine. Don't sit on your hands, and for God's sake, don't keep your mouth shut. Speak up. Be brave. Be clear. Be confident when you speak the simple truth. This is what is required of us. This is what is required of leaders. And I know this is necessary not only in the front of Iran, but in the general front against anti-Semitism, which is showing a resurgence. You all witness it. You're dealing with it. You're fighting it. But Jewish communities everywhere, and especially across Western Europe, are increasingly challenged. They're naturally worried about their security. Some communities are worried about their future viability, and not only their present security problems. I appreciate the fact that governments and leaders in Europe have taken a clear stance, a principled stance. It's important. But we also have to recognize that there is fertile ground for this resurgence of anti-Semitism, which after the horrors of the Holocaust, some believed that it had been laid to rest, and of course it hasn't. The resurgence we see in Europe is unfortunately on many fronts. We see anti-Semitism on the far right, we see anti-Semitism on the far left, and we see anti-Semitism among the Islamists. And it's become prevalent in educated and politically correct circles. By the way, whatever you are, do not be politically correct. Just be correct. You know, just be correct. And the one thing that extremists on all stripes seem to agree on is hatred of the Jews. There is no place for this hatred in Europe or elsewhere. And it must be fought. And the hatred of the Jews, the traditional things that have been said about us over the generations, that we are poisoning the wells, that we are drinking the blood of Christian children, they actually say that about the Jewish state. They actually say we're poisoning the wells. I don't know if we're drinking the blood of little children, but we are deliberately spilling the blood of little children, so they malign us. There are children in Gaza. Who's translating? You know, it's like talking to a mirror. Can you do me a favor? Just, you can be a little less enthusiastic. I mean, I appreciate it. Children in Gaza. You know, we treat the children of the people who fire rockets on us. They're in Israeli hospitals. They come from Yehuda v'Shomron, from the West Bank. They're in Israeli hospitals. You go to Hadassah, 50%. I don't know if it's 50%, but it's in the order of magnitude. A very large number, very large share. Children, Arab patients, treated in the finest Israeli hospitals. Can you imagine that? In Gaza happening? Can you imagine Jews being treated there? You know what treatment they give Jews there. In Khalib? That's the truth. And yet this truth is violated so brutally. They send flotillas to Gaza. Israel is the only force that is actually allowing reconstruction, encouraging reconstruction of Gaza. They send flotillas to Gaza. They don't send flotillas to Syria. It's amazing. This travesty of justice, this violation of the truth, the rape of truth. And you have elites that express an understanding, not an understanding, express support for it. Now, what are we to do in the face of such slander? See, in previous times it was said, don't rock the boat. I say, rock the boat. Don't accept it. Speak up, speak back, expose the lies. Because that's the other thing that we learned. It's not merely to resist the physical attacks on us, it's to resist the slander that precedes the attacks. And stand up. Nobody will respect you if you don't respect yourself. Nobody. I thoroughly reject the idea, let's not make an issue of this. Let's not make an issue of these boycotts. Let's accept some of the slander, because otherwise we'll be making waves. Yeah. It's one of our great misfortunes that we didn't have the capacity to fight back on the moral side. And if you look at successful movements, successful minorities, social movements, you see that the ones that succeeded are the ones who stood up. They didn't shy away. They didn't shutter themselves in some isolated place. They got up. They march in the street. They fight for their rights, for their right to be recognized among the peoples and among the nations and among the minorities and among the majorities. That's what we have to do. Be strong and of good courage, God says to Joshua. I say to you, be strong and of good courage and fight back. Fight back on Iran, fight back on anti-Semitism. Stand up and be proud Jews. So Jews have a right to personal security and collective security and the ability to speak the truth. But Jews have another right that was denied to them for centuries, and that's the right to make Aliyah, the right to return to their historic homeland. This is not a command, it's a right, it's a choice. And for those Jews who choose to exercise that right, we will welcome you home as brothers and sisters. And this year, with the help of the Jewish Agency, we've already welcomed home thousands of Olim from France and from Ukraine and from other countries as well. I've asked Ze'ev Elkin and Natan Sharansky to bring me a plan to ensure the successful aliyah and absorption of these Olim and of the many thousands who will follow them, and I surely can see that many, many thousands will follow them. I mentioned the fact that we're in the midst of an international campaign to delegitimize the Jewish state, and it's very nefarious. It's got two parts to it. One is the overall rejection of Israel, our very right to exist here, and so on. But the other is couched very cleverly in the attempts to put pressure on Israel because there are no negotiations. Except here's the catch. The Palestinians refuse to negotiate and then organize boycotts because there are no negotiations. And of course, the same people who send you flotillas to Gaza and not to Syria, and to talk about children, not the ones that the Palestinians hide behind and sacrifice, the Hamas terrorists, but the ones that Israel, and neglect, of course, the ones that Israel treats in the Israeli hospitals. These same people, or some of them, are saying, we have to press Israel because there are no negotiations that the Palestinians effectively make sure that they don't get restarted. The Palestinian Authority walked away from Barak, they walked away from Sharon, they walked away from Olmert, and they walked away from me. Abbas walked away from President Obama when he asked him, look me in the eye in the Oval Office, tell me, are you willing to accept the framework principles that were organized by Secretary of State John Kerry? I wish him well, by the way. I told him, spoke to him the other day, I said, John, I wish you many things, but I'm not going to tell you break a leg. So Abbas walked away. They consistently, the Palestinians consistently shun direct talks and then call for sanction on Israel because there are no talks. And I think that we have to stop this farce. I think, too, that ultimately there's no substitution for direct negotiations without preconditions between the parties. We have a great deal to talk about. One, mutual recognition. You cannot ask us to recognize a Palestinian nation state and refuse to recognize the Jewish nation state. In our state is not Arab Rhine like their state. In our state, Jews and non-Jewish citizens of Israel have full and civic rights, full equality, which is something you can't say of any country in the Middle East. It's the only country where Arabs and Muslims and Christians and Jews enjoy full civic equality under a real independent judiciary and a real democracy. So when we say Jewish state, what we mean is the national state of the Jewish people where non-Jews all live in civic equality. But if Jews want to come here, any Jew, they're welcome. We embrace them. And if Palestinians would want to go there, that's fine. But what they say is, we'll recognize the state of Israel as long as we can flood it with descendants of the refugees that we refuse to absorb, while Israel absorbed a greater number of refugees, and there's not a single refugee in Israel. We will drown you with the descendants of these refugees, a problem we created and kept alive, and we'll call it Israel. Maybe. Maybe. Which means one Palestinian state, free of Jews, cleansed of Jews, and the other a state that has Jews and Palestinians, but we'll make sure that it is drowned with a Palestinian majority. It is asphyxiated with a flood of refugees, and we shall call it peace. No thanks. Mutual recognition. A Jewish nation state next to a Palestinian nation state, and you, yes, must recognize this as part of a peace. Otherwise, what kind of peace are you offering us? But they refuse. And the second thing is security. Is this a pretext? A whim? Look around us. The whole Middle East is collapsing. States are disintegrating. Every place. Militant Islam, either led by the militant Shiites of Iran or the militant Sunnis, right now led by ISIS, they're filling up the slack. So what, we just walk away? Oh, no, Israel's security needs will be guaranteed, so we are told. By whom? Who will guarantee it? We left Gaza, and 3,000 Hamas overcame 15,000 PA, so in, I don't want to say minutes, hours, it's more accurate. And since then, we've had 12,000 rockets in Gaza. Previously, we left Lebanon, and Hezbollah took it over. And we've had 12,000 rockets from Lebanon. There are 100,000 rockets there poised in addition to the ones that are there. We had international guarantees, 1701. There are now 10,000 more rockets and missiles in Lebanon with 1701, with international guarantees, with a UNIFIL, beefed up UNIFIL. 10 times more than there were before the Second Lebanon War. Who will guarantee our security? Who will prevent the digging of tunnels from Kalkilia into Kfar Saba and along that line? Who will prevent not the smuggling of weapons across the Jordan? That's not the main problem. It is a problem. It's the manufacturing, the self-manufacturing of weapons in Ramallah. Who will do that? Who? Somebody has to do it. And the answer is there's no possibility of a viable peace in the Middle East as it really is, where Syria doesn't exist anymore as we knew it. You know, there are now many Syrias. Yemen doesn't exist as we knew it. Libya doesn't exist as we knew it. And Iraq doesn't exist as we know it. In this Middle East, it's not merely that we want mutual recognition from our Palestinian neighbors. We want to make sure they'll remain our neighbors and won't be taken over. And who'll guarantee that? Only us. Ultimately. We don't want others to fight and die for us, but only Israel can guarantee the security of Israel and, paradoxically, the security of the Palestinian Authority, which we're already deeply involved in assisting because we are preventing terrorism and subversion there. We uncovered a plot a few months ago, Hamas plot, not against us, against somebody else. Only Israel. In any peace agreement, there has to be a recognition of the Jewish state and the right of Israel to defend itself by itself must be guaranteed. These are absolute, simple, clear conditions mandated not for the beginning of negotiations, I have none, but for a successful conclusion. And I raise these things because I think we have to have a common sense, clarity of what is required, but also a deep conviction of the justice of our cause. And I know that you, each of you, is engaged in this battle. You should be armed with the facts. And you should be armed with a sense of justice, not because Israel is a perfect society, it's not, but because in this dark swath of darkness around us, and barbarism and cruelty that is unsurpassed in history, we stand out like a real beacon of freedom, of respect for human rights, of courage, of a people that wants to have the good life you see around you, but want others to have a good life too, and who continually have to defend themselves for this simple human desire. So I commend the important work that the Jewish Agency is doing on the campuses to try to instill this basic truth. And I know how tough a battle it is. That's why you should be joining it, and you are. And deep down, delegitimization is not about this or that Israeli policy. It's about our right to exist here as a free people, our right to defend ourselves, our right to determine our own future. And I think that our most potent weapon against delegitimization is the truth. I've spoken the truth here. Not all the truth, because there's no time, but important components of it that have to be repeated again and again and again. We must speak the truth clearly, repeatedly. I'll tell you the thing that I think most important, proudly. You have to be proud. And people feel it. They feel it. If your head is bowed and you sort of mutter something while you're looking down at your lapels, learn from others. I respect those who fight for their rights. I just wanted to speak the truth. And we have the truth at our side. And the truth is that we seek a real peace with our neighbors. The second truth is that we are a real democracy. And there's nothing else like it in a very, very broad radius. The truth is that we're fighting for our lives. The truth is also that we welcome every Jew here. I want you to know that. I have spent a good portion of my political life ensuring that Israel remained the homeland of every Jew. Reform, conservative, Orthodox, everyone is welcome here alike. This is what Israel is about and will remain about. And I want to continue to strengthen the unity of the Jewish people. And yes, sometimes it's challenging, and we've been able with Seichel. I have to translate that. There are many cameramen here. Seichel means a wise heart. Well, a wise head and a wise heart. We've been able to use heart and mind to overcome these fissures and to try to unite, and we are working at it constantly, because it's very important for me that Israel remain the home of every Jew of all denominations. This is something I'm committed to doing, and I want you to continue to work with me towards that end. I think that you understand in your hearts, not only in your minds, the many challenges that we face. But again, if I had to look at this in a historical perspective, we have overcome the greatest travails of any people. We've defeated the laws of history. There's not been anything like the return of the Jews. the ability to rise from utter destruction and create this modern, vibrant, unbelievably successful and exciting place. Sometimes I wish it would be less exciting, especially on Knesset days. This is one of them. But it is an extraordinary country with tremendous vitality, tremendous creativity, and a tremendous confidence in our ability to forge our future, our common future, and assure our continuity and our preservation of our culture, our heritage, launched into the future. This means working together with you. I'm committed to doing that. I know you are too. I salute you for that. Thank you very much. Toda rabah. Thank you.